everyone. Thanks for taking time to join our webinar, Smarter Hiring, Leveraging AI to Optimise Public Sector Recruitment. Well, that's quite a big and exciting subject to be discussing this morning. I'm Alison McHarg from Sopra Steria's marketing team. I will be your host for today. Now, I see a few more joining. I'll tell you what, I'm going to just go through this once more just so everyone knows who I am. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar this morning. Smarter Hiring, Leveraging AI to Optimise Public Sector Recruitment. Well, that's quite a big subject and an exciting one to be discussing this morning. I'm Alison McHarg from Sopra Steria's marketing team. I'll be your host for today's webinar. Now, as we all know, AI is all around us. Its uses are appearing everywhere and we're all getting to grips with it. Sopra Steria is a major tech supplier, provider and consultancy. We are working with public and private sector clients every day, helping them understand how AI can optimise human decision making for better user outcomes. We're a people business, and that will be really apparent from our panellists today. They will start to bring that to life. They'll also be taking your questions, so please put plenty of questions in the Slido box to the side of your screen. So I'll just go through a couple of bits of housekeeping and then we'll begin. Please be aware your microphones are muted, your videos are off. As I said, questions should be put in the Slido box, which you will see to the right of your screen. Anyone who would like to use closed captions, please look down to bottom left of your screen. You'll see the little dialog box with the CC in it. Press that and you'll see the captions going along, scrolling along the foot of your screen. I just remind everyone as well that this session is recorded. So let's begin. I'm joined today, you'll see on screen now, our panellists. Nick Heckscher, Chief Experience Officer in Sopra Steria's Resourcing Department, Richard Burgess-Kelly, Director of Resourcing Growth, and Neil Gladstone, our AI and Data Practice Director. These panelists, they know your business, they understand it, they want to help you deliver solutions that work in the real world. So, with no further ado, let me introduce and bring on board our first speaker. Good morning, Nick.
Thanks, Alison. Good morning, everyone. I'm Nick, and my role here in Sopra Steria's resourcing organisation is to make sure that our services and digital platforms meet the needs of our public sector client base. In recent years, those needs have varied between 40 and 55,000 roles filled. In that time, while at a macro level, public sector recruiting has been rising by very small levels overall, maybe 1 or 2% per annum, we've seen huge swings in demand from individual departments. We've gone from breaking annual recruitment records one year to virtual recruitment freezes the next in the most extreme examples. Now, this mirrors the wider economy since COVID, as employers have generally under-anticipated the next economic change and then overreacted to the risks of getting left behind. When that's overlaid with both the pace of technological change and constraints on funding, we're now arguably in some sort of multiverse where most of our customers are simultaneously recruiting, retraining, and exiting resources all at the same time. Everything, everywhere, all at once sums it up. The competitive nature of the recruitment industry has led to early adoption of AI, while many of recruitment industry's customers still haven't formalized a policy for AI in recruitment. If you're a candidate applying for a job today, the experience has never been more polarized. For those organizations leveraging tech and AI, their offer feels personalized and relevant. For those who aren't, it doesn't. For those organizations leveraging tech and AI to anticipate and respond to their needs, the experience is instant. For those who aren't, it isn't. The ambition is there across the public sector, but questions remain. What does better in the Prime Minister's statement mean from a recruiting perspective? Do we believe the humans undertaking competency sifts and the like are doing it well today? At the moment, there's a huge challenge in public sector recruiting organisations to swiftly and fairly deal with the large volumes of candidates applying, whether that increases as a result of AI making it easier for them or simply changes in the recruiting marketplace. From our perspective, better depends on the recruiting context, and some of the outcomes sought can be counterintuitive. Everybody recruiting wants a better, faster, fairer, cheaper process. But the order in which those priorities should be ordered should be dictated by the recruiting challenge. When the first priority is speed, the solution would be designed differently to those organisations for whom the first priority is fairness and accessibility. Now, these priorities change sometimes on a role-by-role basis according to internal and external factors: skill, seniority, EVP attractiveness relative to other local employers, recruiter capacity. Being able to define what better looks like for you in a recruiting context will help address the key question we're wrestling with in today's session: where should we start? As part of my early preparations for this session, I thought I'd prepare a word cloud of forces impacting public sector recruiting today. If you could just nudge us on a slide. I asked AI to provide me with a list of words that are relevant to this topic with the letters A and or I in them. It turns out most words, plagiarism, data, funding, integrated, fraud, hybrid, redundancy, reskill, deepfake, mission, volatile, have the letters A and or I in them. AI is literally in every conversation about recruitment right now, from volume hiring to executive search and all parts of the process from marketing to onboarding. With the right data in that multiverse, it will allow us to do everything everywhere all at once. And I'm hugely grateful to my fellow panelists today, RBK, our resident early adopter and recruitment expert, and Neil Gladstone, whose team's digital and AI practice gives us truly different industry insight and perspective to help us determine when, how, and why, rather than whether we should start adopting AI in public sector recruiting. And I think we have a poll to come.
Thank you, Nick. That was a quick run through, and we know how big the subject really is. So the poll, everyone, if you look across to your Slido screen, you will see a Q&A option and a polls option. Please answer the question there. It's what will happen in a second. We will see the numbers starting to go up, and what we'll do is leave that poll just for 30 seconds or so before we hear from Richard, our next presenter. Later on during our discussion and Q&A session, I think we'll come back to the poll results and just see from those who've answered what they're doing and how they have answered. So I think there'll be some quite illuminating responses there. So thanks very much, Nick. I will bring in now Richard Burgess-Kelly. He's our Director of Resourcing Growth. Good morning, Richard.
Morning, everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. As Alison said, well, as Nick said even, most people will call me RBK, but I'm Richard Burgess-Kelly. I'm the Director of Resourcing Growth. I work in partnership with public sector clients to design, implement and customise innovative recruitment, resourcing and workforce solutions. Reflecting on this, we are pretty much at a very pivotal moment. There's mounting pressure on departments to do more with less, and it's the same with suppliers that work with those public sector clients as well. There's an increased demand for efficient, inclusive, and future-ready hiring processes, and it's never been greater. As Nick's mentioned from Keir Starmer, there's a message from top down in government. AI and automation is no longer optional. They're essential enablers in rethinking how we attract, assess, onboard top talent into our public sector clients and our public service landscape. If you could just go back one page for me, please, Catherine. Sopra Steria have Sopra Steria and our sister partner SSCL we've had a bit of a front row seat recently, having discussions with client about their transformation. We're seeing an increased appetite and action around the use of AI at every stage of the recruitment process. This is a little bit of insights into what we've been discussing with a number of our public sector clients that are onboarded, and some of the new clients that we're looking to onboard in the near future. And this is just giving you a little bit of insight of where public sector is thinking about adopting AI into those sections of recruitment. So marketing and attraction, we can see sourcing of candidates, content development, job descriptions and advertisement. They essentially want to use data-driven insights to craft their campaigns that speak to diverse candidate pools and optimize job placements. We've got that assessment and selection area, utilization of AI sifting tools, and there's a bit of nervousness around that. Obviously, everybody's heard about the Amazons of the world and the bias that's been brought into it. But essentially, public sector wants to deploy intelligent screening, psychometric tools, and skills-based matching to make it a little bit more predictive in hiring candidates. Onboarding, we're looking at automating workflows and paperwork to help new hires integrate seamlessly from day one. There's a number of security checks there, so we want to leverage AI to support faster clearances, which obviously reduces the time to hire massively and reduces the admin workload without compromising, which is the important part, the compliance or integrity of those vetting checks. We've got that application tracking system. Everybody on the planet, I would say, is never always happy with their ATS, right? But we want to enhance those ATS platforms with natural language processing and AI-led workflows to give that candidate a better experience, or even the recruiter a better experience. And then candidate comms also is very important. We're seeing a lot of generative AI being used, using AI-powered chatbots for communication tools, and keeping those candidate informed, engaged at every single stage of the recruitment process. For me, some of the government departments, what we're talking about, and we're looking to do a bit of an AI series. So, Catherine, if we could move on one, it's like, where do we start? Each public sector, whether it's like healthcare, education, civil service, or just main government, they've all faced their unique pressures. Yet they're all being asked to harness AI quite responsibly, fairly, transparently. There is a number, and I mean quite a sheer amount of number of UK AI policies coming out. But why am I bringing these to everyone's attention? They're not only technical standards, but they're also ethical, legal, and operational principles that ensure that the AI aligns with public sector values. So we need to make sure as a collective group, whether we're a supplier or a public sector organisation, that we're engaging with these policies. And by engaging with these policies, you're going to be able to equip yourself to make better decisions when procuring or deploying those AI tools, navigating those risks like bias and data misuse, and then obviously demonstrating that innovation in the public sector can still be human-centred, which I think is the most important one. Alison, would you be able to, not Alison, would you be able to knock me on one slide, please? When we've been talking to public sector organisations, these are the encountered challenges of AI, right? So what I've been doing since I've been having conversations with AI, sort of collating the most topical conversations that come back to me and the challenges, and there's a lot of nervousness within public sector, and that's okay. It's okay to be nervous and it's okay to be worried. There is a lot of risks around implementing AI if it's not implemented correctly, right? And I think we just need to be open and honest with that conversation. But if it's done properly, it can be really effective. There's a number of things on here, and what I'm going to encourage people to do is ask questions about a particular topic that you can come back to us at the end. So if you want to just take a second to have a look at some of those encounters challenges, it might be worth picking up and asking Nick, myself, especially from a recruitment perspective, how we could overcome those challenges at the end of the webinar when we've got the QA session, but also as we've got Neil, our AI practice director, on here, really getting into the detail of it. But for me, one of the biggest the two biggest ones that are coming up for me is the governance and accountability. There is a huge lack of in-house expertise. There's a lack of policy within that single department. And obviously the governance process about adopting and onboarding AI, potentially even into the recruitment lifecycle. So, there are a few things in there that we could talk about, procurement blind spots. There's over-reliance, obviously, on those suppliers, difficulty interpreting AI outputs, weak integration with the legal obligations. So I think it might be something that we could pick up and question Neil towards the end. And then and at the moment, what I'm finding is a number of government departments, whether it's public sector, civil service, whether it's NHS, they're still in the process of putting a robust governance framework for onboarding AI in play. And that's something that Neil and the team have really got down and to grips with, and he's going to talk about later. If we could just move on one slide, please, Catherine. These are the positives. So when talking to clients and talking to the market, these are all the positives about implementing AI, right? And these are the reasons that we want to implement it, because it will turn out faster screening of applications. It's going to give us more predictive insights. It's going to reduce that human bias if properly monitored. And it's really pushing that workforce modernization. Again, I would encourage you to ask some questions at the Q&A around some of these topics. So if you want to pick one, stick a question in, and we'll be able to answer them later. But these are the outcomes of what we've been having with conversations with clients. Now, if we could move on one more slide for us. I recently was watching LinkedIn, like most of the recruitment market will do. The recruitment technology landscape and the implementation of AI into technologies products is absolutely vast, right? Even as a supplier that we're underpinned by tools and technology, sometimes it is a bit overwhelming around where do you start? What particular area do you look at to implement AI in your recruitment process? Now, that might be something that we're able to support with, about how to make it a little bit more digestible and manageable. I've put a few things on here about things to think about, especially if you are a public sector organisation that, Sopra Steria and SSCR sister organisation have found. One of the big questions that we ask is, where is that AI built? Where's it hosted? Where's that data hosted? Who's got access to it? Because they're really important questions as being a public sector organisation. I think for me, just to wrap up my little bit, because I know I've got 10 minutes and I could talk for England. Across the NHS, education, and wider civil service, we all face similar challenges. Filling critical roles quickly, fairly, inclusively, while working with those tight budgets and expectations, which is what I mentioned at the start. AI does offer that real potential to help us meet those challenges, from streamlining admin to improving that candidate experience to supporting unbiased data-driven decisions. As I've said, responsible AI adoption is non-negotiable. We've got to be open, trustworthy, transparent. Make sure we've still got that human oversight as we deploy AI in our recruitment processes. Building that capability and making sure that we ask the right questions of suppliers, including us, and embedding strong governance from the outset, we can ensure that AI helps us to recruit faster, but also fairer. This is going to be the first of a series of AI and recruitment podcasts, and obviously we're looking at it from a high level. But together, I think we've got the opportunity to lead by example, showing that the technology can strengthen and not compromise the values and heart of the public service. And that's me. Just thank you very much for your time and pretty much your commitment to responsible innovation.
Thanks, Richard. A very detailed and thought-provoking presentation there as well. And without doubt, the mix of data and people is the key, and it's something that we will come back to again with Neil on the next presentation. Now, just before we hear from Neil, another poll. this one is perhaps a slightly more tricky one. Do you feel confident in using AI tech in your organisation? So let's see how people feel about that, and we'll come back again to the results of it a little bit later. So thank you, Richard, and we'll hear from you again in the Q&A session. Remember, everyone, please ask questions. The real purpose of today is for us to have a good discussion in the last 25 to 30 minutes of the webinar. But just before we get to that, we'll wind up the polling there. Fastest finger first always works. And I will introduce our final speaker today. He's our Sopra Steria UK's AI and Data Practice Director, Neil Gladstone. Good morning, Neil.
Yeah, good morning, Alison. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, as the other guys said, thank you for joining us this morning to talk about this topic. So I guess where I'll start with AI is it is in the news everywhere at the moment. There is so much hype around AI as being the answer to absolutely everything. I'm going to caveat that, and I don't think it is, right? And coming from the AI practice director, I think that's quite an important point. AI is not the silver bullet for absolutely everything. However, it is an extremely powerful tool when applied in the right areas of an organization or a business to drive huge amounts of benefit. And I think recruitment is absolutely one of those areas. And what I wanted to just touch on today are these three areas that I've got on the slide in front of you here, around where I think some of these technology sets can drive real benefit for both the candidate but also the organizational side of things. So first off, multimodal AI bots. So we're all familiar with bots that we've dealt with in the past, right? When you ring up the insurance company and you go through that process, it can be a laborious and quite a challenging process. The bots that are coming out now that are AI enabled, and also not necessarily just text based, they're also voice enabled, are very sophisticated and very powerful tools. So this is an area that can easily be applied to the front end process when you're dealing with candidates, or even supporting internal operations with regards to how you can get access to certain sets of information. So this is absolutely an area that I would advise that people look at. And as I mentioned before, it's not just text, it's voice. We've also now deployed some voice-based agents inside our own business, and they're working to extremely good effect. The second area I want to touch on is AI advanced search. Now, about 9 to 12 months ago, the topic of RAG, retrieval augmented generation, was being thrown around a lot with regards to how AI can really help organizations. And what we're seeing now is that coming into effect. And that process effectively allows you to be able to search your information, vast sets of information, using natural language, and it will give you an answer back in natural language that's tailored to your company's specific information and style. Now, when you think about what this could be a support tool to a recruiter, somebody in the process who's trying to find lots of information out very, very quickly. It can speed that whole process up. But also, if you connect it to something like an AI bot, it could start to provide a very nice service for a candidate at the front end of the process who's actually trying to find out some information about what's happening. You can connect that AI bot to actually then start to do advanced search capability at the back end to pull information back and share with the candidate. So actually there is no longer necessarily a need for a human agent to be involved in that process. It can be dealt with by the AI. The third one is AI agents, and a term you might have heard in the last 6 months or so is agentic AI. Now, this is something that I'm really excited about, and we're working with a number of the big sort of tech partners you can see listed on the screen there. That they are investing heavily in this, because this effectively is how you can start to build really complex AI agents that can undertake quite sophisticated activities. But from an agentic point of view, you can start to workflow those agents together. So you might have an expert that does one thing with regards to reviewing CVs. You may have another expert that does something else with regards to terms and conditions and understanding how that works. You can then have an orchestrating agent that then starts to manage that process. And actually what you end up with is a suite of agents working together to solve a particular problem. And this technology set now is becoming so sophisticated where it can actually start to reason and understand what are the tasks that it needs to do to solve a particular problem. And it can adapt as well, depending on the result sets that it gets from various agents or responses or data sets that it retrieves as part of the process. So you can start to see how these AI agents are almost becoming part of the workforce, and some of the big tech organizations like Salesforce, for example, have started to talk about this with regards to AI agents actually becoming part of the workforce inside an organization, which I think is quite a powerful statement. And a lot of the AI that you're seeing in technology sets, including the big five here, but also, as RBK shared in the previous slide at the end of his presentation there's so many technology sets out there that are starting to embed this kind of AI agent capability inside them. It's becoming quite accessible. You don't necessarily need to be an AI expert to be able to understand how to deploy these things, because you can configure them quite easily. So what I want to talk to you next, if we just move on, is some of the high-level benefits that you can get from this. And again, RBK's covered some of these points already, so I won't double dip, as it were. But I think things like faster service, reduced waiting time, you can understand it. If these things are available 24/7 and able to respond to 30-40% of the questions that are getting asked because they're relatively routine type queries, that's the level of efficiency that it can drive into the process. And you can couple that with hyper personalization, because the agent understands who it's talking to. It may have all the previous chat history, etc. It can really personalize that response, which is going to really lift up that candidate experience, which is what it's all about. The other benefit I want to talk to here, and this is not often discussed, but the level of feedback and the improvement you can get with the increased level of detail and consistency you can get with AI agents actually allows you to be able to improve your processes more effectively. If you take the example of you may have a team of 10 people, 2 are very diligent, always writing very good notes about the interactions that they have. The other 8 might not be so good. If you've got an AI agent undertaking some of that routine activity and you specify exactly what you want it to capture, you can do the sentiment analysis of all the various text and conversation that's happened. It can collate that and actually analyze that for you. And with the data sets that come in, it can start to look for how you can improve your process and your service. So actually what it's doing is identifying opportunities that you didn't even know were there with regards to how you could actually improve your process. And then you've also got things like accessibility advantages. Obviously, if you're able to converse in natural language rather than some of the archaic systems that might be out there, shall we say, that certainly does provide advantages in the accessibility space. So moving on. Yeah, so this is really key, and both Nick and RBK have touched on this point. There are risks with regards to using AI, but the answer cannot be no, because this is too game changing for organizations across all industries, and recruitment being one of those. So how you actually control the risk and manage the risk is absolutely essential, and governance is key to that. And like I said, RBK's covered some of these risks already, but things like bias, ensuring that the data sets that you are driving your AI solutions on do not have entrenched bias in them. And there's tooling that you can use and processes that you can use to make sure that that is the case. So you don't have a problem with regards to effectively taking what might be a historic issue and just replicating that inside your AI system. Your data sets, what data are you using? Do you need to hold that data? Where is it being held? And understanding all this kind of stuff. I talked about hyper personalization a little while ago, and actually using the data that you hold to provide that service. But actually, are you even allowed to hold that data? So you've got to make sure that you've got that thought process really, really clear in how you're going to manage your data, where it's going to be held. Security goes without saying. I mean, this is something like any other tool set that you have. You need to make sure that you've got the appropriate security wrappers around it. But again, sovereignty is something that's not thought about enough when it comes to AI, because you may be using a tool that is being developed, for example, let's just say by a UK business, and that tool is being hosted in the UK. But where is that back-end foundation AI model hosted? Where is your data actually going? Is it going to a model that's hosted in Europe? Is it in the US? Are you allowed to be moving data into those specific spaces? So it's really key that you understand all of that. And the government, the guiding principles, the 10 guiding principles for utilising AI touches on this really well, and I think that's a really good place to start for any organisations that are debating where to go with AI. Certainly from a Sopra Steria perspective, about 12 months ago, before those guidelines were released, we actually set up our own internal AI governance board, which had a very similar terms of reference to what those 10 guiding principles are from the UK government. And it's proved very effective for us, because actually what it's there to do, it's not to be the fun police to stop you from deploying lots of cool AI technology. It's actually trying to help you with regards to what can you do, how can you do it ethically, is this the right thing to do with regards to using AI, where is your data? All those kind of good questions are being asked, and what it's starting to do is really drive some entrenched good practice into how we deploy AI solutions across the business. And this is absolutely an area that we're talking to a lot of customers about at the moment, because they are rightly concerned that there's probably most staff using AI in some shape or form, but actually what are they using? How is it being governed and controlled? What level of control can they put around it to ensure it's being done in the right way? So we have various propositions in this space that help organizations get started. So if you want to know more about that, please do reach out. So next slide, please. Now, this is the age-old challenge, right? Poor data in, poor data out, and AI is no different. And all the attention and the focus always happens at the top end of this iceberg, where everyone gets excited about the technology and what can it do and all that kind of great stuff. And rightly so, right? Because it is quite exciting. But 95% of the effort is getting the foundational data right to ensure that your AI solutions can drive real value. Because one thing I know about AI, it will give you a wrong answer very confidently. So you need to make sure that you are really crystal clear with regards to the data foundations that you have, that it's using the right data, up-to-date data that it's allowed to access. So you've got proper version controls in there. And we can start to see now, with the pace of change with AI and the amount of new technology that's coming out so frequently, it's those organizations that have got their data straight that are able to take advantage of those technology sets quickly. And I think personally, over the next few years, it'll be those organizations that start to then leave the pack and really lead from the front, because they're able to take advantage of that technology straight away, rather than having to go back through a really long-winded process trying to understand how they can get their data ready to take advantage of that technology set. So this is a topic that I just cannot sort of overstress with regards to the importance of data. Next slide, please. Okay, so some key takeaways from my side, and Nick raised the question earlier on in the session about where should we start with this, and this is again a very common conversation that I and my team are having with customers across lots of different industries, and it's clear that AI technology is a key enabler for that really good recruitment experience, but also for lots of other organizations in different industries. And what I would say, first off, be technically ambitious with this. I think there is concerns around AI, a bit of a spectre around it, but I think actually there's so much cool technology out there. Really open your eyes to what it can do. But then to balance that, start simple and build. What you don't want to do is go straight into a massive transformation program when you haven't got the team or the capabilities established or the governance established inside your business. So start simple and then build from that. Start to build momentum. Focus on some sort of the so-called low-hanging fruit with regards to relatively high impact use cases that can be delivered relatively quickly, because you're confident that you've got the data in shape. You've got some people that are proactive in their thinking about how they can drive innovation into the business. The third point is around ethical considerations and being responsible. This is so key. And there's the whole piece around, actually AI might be able to do it, but should we do it? Is it the right thing to do? And there are certain use cases where that simply might not be the case. But also from an environmental point of view, we need to be cognizant of that. And also certainly with regards to the solutions that we design for our clients, it's always around trying to make sure that you're using the right technology that's right size for the job. So don't use a huge AI model to solve a very, very simple question. Use a much smaller model that's going to use less energy, etc. And the last point, be people and data focused. I mean, AI is not here to take people's jobs. It's here to augment people's jobs. And that's certainly the ethos that we have inside Sopra Steria. It's about how can we liberate our workforces and our clients' workforces to be more effective and more efficient in how they do what they currently do today, but also allow them to be able to do more than they currently do, point them to the direction of actually what new things could we do that could drive extra value. So it's absolutely critical that you have your citizen, your staff, your candidates all at the forefront of your design process when you're thinking about AI. And then just labeling the data point one more time, make sure you're data focused, because that will make sure that you're delivering a solution that can add real value and not cause you more problems. So that's all I'm going to talk about today. Obviously, we'll move into Q&A in a second, but I think we've got one last poll before we move on.
We do indeed, Neil. Thank you very much. Once again, a very detailed and comprehensive presentation, which we will start to unpick in some questions in just a few seconds. But everyone, please just answer our last poll if you would. You cannot answer up to 3 choices there. You might be on not sure, you might be on all of the above, but there are other choices up to 3 if you wish, and it'd be great to see what comes back from that. As folks are doing their poll, thanks to our presenters this morning, I think it really has brought home the size and scale of AI in the recruitment industry. Recruitment, as we know, is a huge area. We have a lot of expertise in Sopra Steria, and that was very much on show today. But I think bringing in the AI and data elements shows the size and the scale of our proposition. So, fairer, faster, better, reduced. Nick, keywords which are really what the client asks for, of course, when they're coming to us for recruitment, whereas Richard has unpicked just some of the way that AI will help and make sure that decisions are good, they're better, and they're made without bias. He was really quite clear that there's lots of benefits coming from AI, but equally there are the guidelines and the ethical considerations. And I think, Neil, you very, very coherently covered them off in your presentation. I'm sure our group will agree and want to hear more. So I think let's close the poll, and from there we're going to go into questions. So looking just at our questions that have come up, what I'll do is I'll just go to one from Scott Hardy. It's at the top. It's been liked. And I think probably in the first instance, we'll go to Nick, but I wonder also, Neil, if you would come in on this one. But the question is, how do you balance the use of AI in recruitment while still maintaining a human and inclusive candidate experience?
Thanks, Alison, and thanks, Scott, for the question. I'm going to come at this from a recruiting perspective first, and then I guess Neil will maybe overlay some sort of an AI mindset to where I'm coming from. But the way in which I think we go about responding to this this challenge is to think about what is the experience that a candidate is looking for. So that's 4 or 5 phases. That's okay, welcome me. So how can we be instant? How can we be quick? How can we be there? How can we be always on? Obvious applications for tech, digital and AI tools in there. Second thing is around understand me. Who am I? What do I want? What are my experiences? What are my skills? What are my ambitions? Really interesting data challenge and opportunity presented in terms of then how you can sort of segment that candidate interest in order to then be able to excite me. Okay, and you might excite me by signposting me to things, which brings us back to the data and some of that segmentation. And then you get into some of the understand me deeply and match me areas of what that sort of candidate experience is as they emotionally go through a recruitment journey. And some of those tools can be AI, and there's obviously a range of interventions that will use their human, digital, and potentially AI along the way. But I think for me that balance is about understanding what the human wants, because then the AI can be designed to support it. Neil.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. I think it's a good build on from there. I think this balance between human versus AI is such a key question. And as I alluded to in my presentation, you know, this is not about AI taking over the world and get rid of everybody's jobs. For me, it's around how can you augment the role of the human to really try and drive a better process. And I think this is where you've got to understand in that whole life cycle that Nick just kind of went through there, where would AI do some of the heavy lifting on some of the activities that might be a little bit more mundane or less human centric, that allows you to provide a better service and free up more time for your human staff to be able to interact with candidates to give a much better and improved service. So looking at things like back-end processing, etc., that's an obvious place to go. And I think that whole point around inclusivity, you're getting into the topic of making sure that the processes and the agents and the models that you're using are well trained on unbiased data. You know, if you have got biases in your data sets and you start to use those to build solutions that you are then facing off to your candidates, those biases will be elevated by that process. So it's really key that you ensure you've got the proper checks and balances in place to scan your data to ensure that they are, you know, effectively going to be inclusive processes. But I think this, when it goes back to my last point around, you know, people are absolutely central to this. I think you've got to think about what that user experience is. You know, what is that candidate experience that you want to see, and actually how can I overlay AI in that process to try and enhance that, rather than just thinking I've got some cool tech here, let's deploy it and see what happens. It's got to always be about the outcome that you want to achieve, and coming at it from the human first will make sure you focus it in the right area.
Thanks, Neil. And Richard, you have your hand up. Please come in.
Yeah, I think what's quite interesting is when I get this with public sector clients, you know, in the NHS, education, civil services, when we talk about AI and we talk about implementation of AI into candidate experience and recruitment process, it seems to be right. The AI is going to do the work, and then there's going to be human that intervenes at certain stages. Now, I think we've got to flip our thinking, because a lot of the AI products I see as, especially as a recruiter or a service provider, I see them as recruitment enablement, right? And what do I mean by that is actually these tools and technology that we're utilizing is going to help you identify niche and hard to find skills. They're going to make, you know, the AI is going to alert you to a particular skill set, somebody with a clearance that's come in as an example that you might be looking for. So I wouldn't see it as in like, oh, it might take our jobs, it's going to reduce some of our headcount. But there's also that ability where it's going to equip you and arm you with the ability for you to focus more on that candidate experience by being able to say, you know, the AI might pick up and say, you haven't spoken to this candidate for 3 days. You know, there might be a prompt there. So you could think about it one way, but you could also think it about as an enablement piece. And I'm seeing some really cool tools and tech that are doing that, that's supporting the recruiters, the hiring managers, giving them nudges of and alerts to say, do you know what, you've got an action here to do. This is what your action, here's all your information about what you spoke about last. I know you've got a busy workload and you've got a busy day, but you need to do this, this, and this to get this candidate through. And it's very important because we haven't seen one of these candidates for X amount of time. So yeah, I think just don't think about it as in it's going to come in, it's going to be AI or people with humans just in between. I think you just got to think about AI is going to be supporting those individuals delivering jobs. Yes, we will see some headcount efficiencies, but realistically, we're still going to have people embedded in the recruitment process at every single stage. It's not going to be fully automated, but we're going to utilize AI tools to equip the recruiter to deliver their job more effectively.
Thanks, Richard. That's great. And it's good, everyone, the whole purpose of this Q&A is to get the round robin of perspectives from both our recruitment experts on the panel, but also our AI and data expert, because really I think it's the themes coming through they are hand in hand at all times. And just, ask everyone to note, there's also a question from us on that final slide, and please put in the Slido, even though it's not a question as such, what would you like to hear more about from us in future for future webinars, because we intend running a series of these. So if there are subjects that you want to hear about, please let us know. So anyway, I'm going to carry on with the questions. Another one, again, I'll start with you on this one, Nick, but I suspect that everyone will have a perspective here. Could AI-enabled tools support civil servants in internal mobility and career progression?
Thanks, Alison, and whoever asked that one. I might have hinted at this in my previous answer, actually, because I think somebody asked a question, what are they most excited about? And so I'm answering two questions for the price of one. The ability of AI to help signpost opportunities to talent, whether it's an internal talent pool from a mobility perspective or an external talent pool of people who are predisposed to working in your organization, is for me the most exciting thing. I think there's plenty of people working for organizations today and or interested in working in the sector tomorrow who don't quite know what their next step might be, don't quite know where their skills might be best harnessed for public good within that organization. So with the right data and segmentation of that talent pool, the ability to understand the candidate and serve up appropriate job recommendations based on not just what they are, but what they could become, I think is where this game is really, really going to change, and we exponentially increase the yield we can get from applicants coming into our organisation, and the internal experience of those employees already in the organisation who are very, very driven by development and learning and training. So some sort of, the ability for artificial intelligence to understand, if you develop this skill and put it together with your existing experience, you'll unlock that career path over there. The machine learning that could deliver that for us is really exciting to me.
And I think just to come in there, I think that the technology for me is not the limiting factor with regards to that question at all. I think it's about how you piece the various information sets together to allow people to really start to understand what that path looks like. Because if you've got various job role vacancies, you've got your own capabilities and skills, and you've got what you want to do, and you've got the more detailed search capability that I talked about earlier on that can retrieve information from lots of different data sources, you can quite easily pull that together to start to develop a bit of a picture as to actually, well, what are the options or the development areas or the gaps that I need to try and fill to be able to do what I want to do. So for me, the technology is absolutely not the limiting factor here. It's about how you apply the different data sets needed to be able to answer that question, to be able to give employees that insight. And I think it's a really good case study. How can we actually help our own staff move, develop, and further their own careers, as well as that kind of wider recruitment piece.
Great, thanks all panel. Richard, this is one for you, but I then want and ask that Neil also comes in, because this is one about innovation and excitement, and the market we know is flooded with lots of innovation. So we'll get to the exciting bits, the things we want to explore. But then Neil, you have been quite clear in your presentation, the use of agentic AI, the developments, the sovereignty, ethical oversight. So first of all, Nick, Richard, have you seen any standout innovations in the market that you're excited to explore? Let's hear about them.
Tricky question. And I've got a feeling it's come from one of the organizations that I'm trying to bring on as a supplier, right? So I don't know if this has been planted by one of them. I possibly can't name drop on this call, but the short answer is yes, I have seen some standout innovations. I'm pretty sure I've seen standout innovations in every single area of recruitment, as well as products, processes, and technology providers that go across all of the recruitment process. And I'm not just talking about ATS, right? I'm talking about AI innovation, an AI augmentation where you could put bots in at every single stage of the recruitment process, right? Yes, I've seen standout. Yes, we're in the process of onboarding some organizations. Yes, I've seen our providers and our resourcing technology providers, as well as our, what I would call Sopra Steria big providers that Neil was showing, our group technologies, because what we've got in Sopra Steria, and just to be, because I know I've got some of the recruitment on here and I've got some group individuals, we've got our Sopra Steria core technology stack, but for some of our smaller clients or some of our resourcing clients, we've also got a resourcing technology ecosystem that we need to utilize, just to deliver some smaller programs and bigger programs. But for me, yes, there's lots of standout innovations. I'm excited about where the next couple of months are going. I'll tell you the pace that's changed, Alison. We've worked on a number of bids over the last 3 years. And I must say, probably every 3 months to 6 months, what I submitted in that bid is probably out of date within 3 to 6 months, because innovation and products and services are changing so rapidly at the moment. So we're constantly ever having to evolve. And the recruitment market's exciting for that, and it's a really interesting one to be a part of. But yes.
So I'm loving this question.
Now, you talked about the fun piece earlier, Neil.
Yeah, absolutely.
For them to come in.
Yeah. But I'll start just by almost finishing RBK's sentence there with regards to the pace of change. My role is to try and understand what's happening in the market, what the technology sets are, but also the novel applications of how that technology can really make a difference. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter how cool the tech is, if it's not solving a business problem that's going to drive a really positive outcome, what do you need it for? And I think this is where you've got to be really, really key with regards to innovation. But I'll come back to that point in a second. The thing that I think is that really is going to change the way that we work in the next few years. And I'm not just talking about recruitment now, I'm talking about across the whole market, because my role covers all industries across the UK. And that is agentic AI. This whole idea of having agents that you can train up like you would train a human being with regards to feeding them examples, information. What do you do with this kind of scenario? Therefore, actually do that. Resolving problems, reasoning. And then actually they've got enough information to be able to go away and actually solve a problem. It's not like, if this request comes in, do this. You actually get an open-ended question or a real problem statement that comes in, and these agents can go away and actually work out what they think the right answer is. And with the whole agentic workflow, they can go and undertake that action, obviously with the right human gates and kind of support and MI along the way. But you can really start to see how you can automate more of your business by using this kind of army of agents to be able to do these specific jobs. And I think that is going to change the way in which organizations run. It's not going to get rid of workers. All it's going to do is elevate the contribution that humans bring to the process. And I think I used the term earlier on about liberating your workforce. I think this is going to do it in spades, because what it's going to do is, if you think about 20-30% of your day is probably spent doing stuff that you just find really kind of dull and mundane and administrative. Imagine if all that's just being dealt with, and all you do is you get a report just to tick it off at the end of the day saying that's all good. And you can focus all your time and energy on the things that are really making an impact. But just to come back to the point around the novel technology, it's often the novel application and implementation of a simple technology set that can make a massive difference. So I think you've got to be really careful in this market not to have a kind of magpie view where it's like after the next shiny thing. Actually, look at what the baseline stable technology sets are, but then think about your business and your organization, how it operates, and where this technology could make a difference, and thinking about those big challenges or big outcomes that you're trying to drive strategically. How can AI enable that? And you might actually find that you get the biggest bang from some of the quite simple technology sets. And can I just say one last thing on this point? One of the coolest pieces of technology that I've seen actually is in Sopra Steria. And I've only been in the business just over a year, but we developed a sign language bot. This was over in France. And this is something when I talked about accessibility in my presentation earlier on, but this actually allowed you to communicate with an agent using sign language through the video that you have on your laptop. Now, how cool is that with regards to trying to actually open up this technology and accessibility to wider markets?
It was a world first, Neil. It was a world first.
It was. And it's an example that I try and bring up as much as I can, because again, it's about being people focused in what it is you're trying to do. That technology will make a lot of difference to a lot of people.
Sums it up. Thanks, Neil. With 5 minutes to go, we have one more question, and I'm going to go to Nick with it, because he and his teams, obviously involving, including Richard as well, handle so many applications per year, many thousands. Fiona C asks, how easy is it for candidates who know how to game the AI tools, such as using AI to write applications, producing vetting documents, etc.? Is that a help or a hindrance, and how do you deal with it? I suspect Nick and Richard will want to come in on this, but Nick, if you could begin, and then I think after that we will come bring the meeting to an end. You have 4 minutes.
Thanks, Alison. Thanks, Fiona. I think key to this is, how do you design a blended recruitment and selection process that uses all sorts of different interventions along the way to ensure the identity of an individual and that they're not a deep fake, for example. You can use AI to spot AI. You can teach AI how to see whether or not answers are those typically generated by AI. And if this hasn't really come up until now, so I'm just going to squeeze it in, even though it doesn't quite align to this topic. We need to communicate with candidates whether they should, what we want them to be doing with AI, rather than be silent on the topic. There are a bunch of candidates who will be using AI to support their application come what may. There will be a bunch of applicants who think they shouldn't, that that's somehow cheating, and there will be those who don't know. So we need to be conscious in terms of what we want and how we communicate that to applicants, and also be clear what our sort of downstream policies are. Hence the question at the beginning of the conversation around who has a policy about how AI might work in recruitment. I think half of respondents do, and the rest either don't or are working on it. But it feels like perhaps the market's a little bit quiet on this in terms of messaging to candidates. But that's a sort of side point. Richard, back to the core question.
It's easy. It's part of the first question. So Neil's team threw some curveballs at me when we were going and talking about this, actually. I probably hadn't appreciated how some candidates are very much playing the game. I don't want to say this out loud because in case people turn into candidates, but they've been putting code in CVs in white and sending it into ATSs, and they've been putting the algorithm to make sure no matter what they wrote in their CV, they're going to come top of the, to get picked out. So, I mean, we've literally thought about stuff from all over the place. So, and we are putting in those defenses, but it's something that you have to remember that AI isn't always making that decision. It's bringing it to the attention to say, okay, this is a top rated CV, but the human is actually making the decision by reviewing it, shortlisting it. We've got that human element in there, but it's an interesting one because you've got candidates that are utilizing it to enhance, try and bend the rules a little bit, get to the top of the pile, but you've got organizations that are also utilizing AI to defend themselves in the sector. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think RBK.
That was an extreme version. It was an extreme version.
No, but it's a valid one, and I think this goes back to being responsible by design, secure by design, with regards to how you're designing your solutions with these things. Just like you would do with anything else, AI is no different. You have to think about what these potential challenges are, and you have to put the safety nets in place that are going to catch these kind of things. And there are lots of tools out there that you can actually use to help support you in your development process, and certainly the development processes and standard sort of operating processes we have around AI inside Sopra Steria allow us to catch things like this, but it's a fast moving market. So again, we've got to be really on it with regards to this because it's constantly evolving.
Thank
Not an
you
easy
all.
one.
Thank you. What an interesting and wide-ranging discussion this has been. We're at 11 o'clock. Thanks to everyone who took time out of their mornings to join. What we will do is, we haven't got to every question, sadly. We knew the discussion would be quite ranging and there would be so much detail. We haven't got to every question, so we will write to all those who attended with a link to the webinar and to answer those couple of extra questions, which are very valid, and I know the team would want to answer them for you. Look out for more webinars along a similar line coming this year. But thanks everyone, thanks our panelists, and we look forward to seeing you all again before very long. Thanks and good morning everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.